When the rain is blowing in your face and the whole world is on your case, I could offer you a warm embrace to make you feel my love. When the evening shadows and the stars appear and there's no one to dry your tears, I could hold you for 1,000,000 years to make you feel my love. I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but I will never do you wrong. I've known it from the moment that we met, no doubt in my mind where you belong. I'd go hungry, I'd go black and blue, I'd go crawling down the avenue. No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love. The storms are raging on the rolling sea and on the highway of regret. The winds of change are blowing wild and free. You ain't seen nothing like me yet. I could make you happy, make your dreams come true. There's nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you to make you feel my love, to make you feel my love. We made it!
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Haden. I'm the pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hey, I'm Courtney Young and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm back.
Hi, Brandon!
And that's his title, Back. Brandon, Director of Being Back.
Cool.
Welcome to yet another installment of our pre-recorded live show at Kindred UMC. We are continuing our journey through the book of Jonah, which also happens to be the name of my dog. He might become alert as we talk about the book because he recognizes his name, I don't know, about 25% of the time.
It's a good shot.
Yeah, you know, he responds much better to like noises and whistles and snaps.
Me too.
And tone of voice. First of all, before we get into this week's final chapter, is there anything from previous weeks or last week that you have, would you like to bring up that went unaddressed that you have thought about? I know you, Brandon, you haven't been here, so, but you were a part of Bible studies and things, weren't you, at some point? Or have you taken a month off?
Not the whole month, but do I remember the past month?
If you want to give like a 60-second summary of last week, that might be helpful.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
it's actually easier to do just like previously on.
Cool.
Previously on the book of Jonah. So Jonah. So first of all, Jonah is an anti-prophet. It's a satirical book. It's meant to be ironic and funny. So most prophets, they hear from the Lord to go to a Jewish city to, basically say they're going to be destroyed if they don't repent. Then that prophet, who is always like an altruistic, compassionate person, begs God not to do that. That's typically what happens. And then they go to the city, and then the city's like, you want us to stop doing whatever we do? Like, we're not going to do that. And then they arrest them or kill them or torture them. Or, like, they do horrible things to these prophets. Jonah, on the other hand, gets a word to go to an enemy city, Nineveh. So not a Hebrew Jewish city, but an enemy city, an Assyrian city. Go to Nineveh, tell them that they're going to be destroyed. And then instead of pleading and like doing it, he goes in the complete opposite direction. He's like, I'm not going to do it. All of this is done in a humorous way. And that's weird because we don't speak Hebrew, so we're translating into English, and there's all kinds of weird lost in translation stuff going on. But just take my word for it, it's actually a really funny book. This is actually satire and humor. And then so Jonah goes in the opposite direction. He can't help but convert a group of sailors who are pagans, and they don't even know Yahweh's name, but they end up devoting their lives to him by the end of the interaction. He gets swallowed up by a fish, spit out on the dry land, and when he's swallowed up, this is the part we skipped because I only had 3 weeks and there's 4 chapters.
Right.
So we skipped chapter 2.
Is this the poem part?
Yeah, it's the poem, it's the song of praise. And so when he gets swallowed up by the fish, Jonah actually, again, kind of funny, begins to like sing God's praises, you know? It's like it's his character arc, it's his transformation. So like he gets thrown overboard and then swallowed up, and then he is thankful to God for saving him through being swallowed by this fish. And then he gets spit up on dry land and has to go to Nineveh. And so now we're at last week. He goes to Nineveh. He doesn't even go all the way into the city. He says 40 days more and God's going to destroy the city, and then he pieces out. Again, in an ironic, humorous tone. Normally the cities respond by killing and torturing the prophet. This time the city, the enemy city, the Assyrians go, what? Then let's beg for forgiveness. And they declare a fast. They do typical acts of Jewish, ancient Jewish grief and mourning, which are sitting in ash, wearing sackcloth, crying out to God. Like, these are all kind of typical, this is stuff you would do when somebody dies. And they declare a fast. And then at the end of chapter 3, God changes his mind and says, I'm not going to destroy the city because they've actually responded positively. So again, all of this is like ironic humor, satire. It's the opposite of how a normal prophet story in the Bible is supposed to go.
I'm picturing like Deadpool kind of like anti-hero. Like,
Yeah, that's
go and save North
great
Korea.
example.
Like,
Yes.
forget the cities in the U.S. that need help. Go and save North Korea. And then like converts a plane full of people, and then they're like, "Oh, we're in North Korea. We're suddenly gonna take down all the walls and behave."
And then like the joke would be if North Korea was suddenly like, if Kim Jong-un was suddenly like, you make an excellent point.
But you're
We
right.
should democracy and
Undo all of
capitalism
these
is the way.
things.
Freedom is the way to like. It's that kind of level of
Take
irony.
the nuclear. Yeah.
It's that absurd. Also, like
Just like
that. Jonah is an absurdist
peak
take.
Deadpool humor on that whole saga.
Yeah. So the same way that Deadpool is this ridiculous anti-hero who doesn't want to do what is good and noble and right, that's who Jonah is. Jonah is an anti-prophet. He doesn't want to do what prophets are supposed to do. And the reason prophets are supposed to be that way is because they're so faithful to God. And the first thing he does is like,
No.
peace out.
No.
Like, I'm not doing it. Yeah. So that brings us to chapter 4. Now remember, because chapter 4 starts in like but then So remember that the last thing that happens in chapter 3 is God changes his mind about destroying Nineveh. Okay? Because we're going to pick up on it. Literally, the word is but. So God changes his mind about destroying Nineveh. Chapter 4, verse 1. But this was very displeasing to Jonah, and he became angry. He prayed to Yahweh and said, "O Yahweh, is not this what I said while I was still in my own country?" So this is an important punchline, because the chapter 1 starts with, "Go to the Assyrians, your enemy, and tell them I'm going to wipe them out." Which any Hebrew reading this story when it was written would be like, yeah! Like, get them finally. And Jonah goes in the opposite direction. He's like, I won't do that, and goes in the opposite direction. But then proceeds to be kind of a dick throughout the whole thing. So it leaves the reader the whole time with this question of like, so why didn't... Because the first presumption would be that God wants him to destroy Nineveh, and he's too compassionate or good to do that. That he cares about his enemy so much that he's unwilling to go there. But then he kind of proves to be like this kind of crotchety, grumpy, mean person. And you're like, what the hell is actually going on? Why didn't he go to Nineveh in the first place? What is going on? This is the punchline to the whole joke. This is Jonah speaking. "O Yahweh, is not this what I said while I was still in my own country? That is why I fled to Tarshish at the beginning, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and ready to relent from punishing. And now, O Yahweh, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." So the punchline of all this is, the reason that Jonah wouldn't go to Nineveh is because, and he's complaining about this, the God he serves is gracious, patient, compassionate, and loving. It's a punchline. Like, this is the grand reveal of why Jonah wouldn't go. Again, there was some loss in translation. It's not necessarily laugh out loud funny, but it's important to understand that this is actually a humorous take. Jonah gets a word to go to his enemy and tell them that God's going to wipe them out. It's like, yeah! And he won't. And then the reader's like, oh, Jonah must be this really sweet, nice guy. And then the big reveal at the end is like, see? This is why I didn't want to come here. I knew that if they changed their minds, you were going to show mercy and forgiveness and love and compassion. And fuck these people.
This is still Deadpool. This is still going to the X-Men and be like, I knew you weren't going to beat them up. You can't
Why
kill
won't
people.
you let
it's
me
against
kill
your
these
contract.
people?
You're pansy, you're too nice.
Yeah.
I knew this already. I told you so.
You have all these weird rules about being compassionate to the people you're fighting. Can't I just shoot them all in the brain?
Just finish them.
Yeah. This is why I didn't want to ask you for help. Because I knew that you were gonna have some kind of character moment where I'm supposed to learn a lesson and I'm supposed to learn how to love my enemy, and it would be so much quicker and easier if I could just kick them all in the crotch and then shoot them in the face.
Bite them already.
Yeah, so Jonah is very close to Deadpool. And in fact, he's one of the original anti-heroes in history. He's one of the this is one of the original stories that does the anti-hero kind of thing. So, okay. Picking up at verse 4. And Yahweh said, so after he says, it's better that I die than to be here, Then Yahweh responds like this. And Yahweh said, is it right for you to be angry? Then Jonah went out of the city, sat down east of the city, and made a booth for himself there. He sat under it in the shade, waiting to see what would become of the city. And then Yahweh Elohim, the Lord God, Yahweh Elohim appointed a bush and made it come up over Jonah to give shade over his head, to save him from his discomfort. So Jonah makes a little like campground basically. And then God causes like a shrub to give him shade so that he would be spared from the sun. Verse 7. But when dawn came up the next day, God appointed a worm that attacked the bush so that it withered. When the sun rose, God prepared a sultry east wind, and the sun beat down on the head of Jonah so that he was faint, and he asked that he might die. He said, "It is better for me to die than to live." A little melodramatic.
Super dramatic.
Verse 9. But God said to Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the bush?" And he said, "Yes, angry enough to die." Then Yahweh said, "You are concerned about the bush for which you did not labor and which you did not grow. It came into being in a night and perished in a night. And should I not be concerned about Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also many animals?" The end.
I love how it ends on, and also
And
many animals.
That's the end of the story.
Lots to debate with your friends about in ancient Hebrew there.
Yeah, well, it's not the best story structure, but even that is also subversive. He doesn't. It started raining, and Jonah the dog gets very scared of rain, and so he starts to get very needy. You're gonna be okay, buddy. I promise. We live in a house. It's not hurricane. It's gonna be fine. So Jonah. Okay. Let's break it down. This is a little kindergarten-y, but so what actually happens in the text? In this text.
So Jonah campground status, right? Like tree magically grows.
Yeah.
Jonah says.
And this is all after Jonah realizes that God's not going to wipe out Nineveh.
Right.
And he's like, "Damn it! I knew it! I knew you were going to do this."
So I get shade, but my arms are definitely crossed.
Yeah, right. And so he goes outside and he makes a little campground.
He gets shade. It says yay shade, and the next day
A worm eats the bush.
the bug.
And why? Why does all that happen?
To teach him the lesson.
Well, who causes it is really what I'm getting at. I think you're right. You're going in the right direction. But before we go there, it's
God.
God causes the worm.
Yeah, it's literally and directly attributed to God just does this. It's like miracle work. It's a bush grows overnight, a worm eats it, and then what's Jonah's response to the tree dying?
Ask to die.
Again, it's this. Yeah, he's like a little.
A little bitch.
Yeah, he's a little toddler. He's a little toddler throwing a timber tantrum.
Yeah.
Right there.
And so Jonah says, "Angry enough to die." And then what is the point that God makes about all this in the end?
I'm trying to put that into a one sentence adventure. Just I care a lot for a thing that I built.
Yeah.
I don't want to destroy it. So you don't get to care about this because you didn't build it. It was there and then it wasn't. But can't you see how much it would matter more if you had built it?
I would adjust it a little bit.
Yes.
Not you don't get to care. It's more like you care so much about this thing that you didn't have any part in.
Right.
There it is. Yes.
And he's making, and God then makes, and again, this is we don't want to take this too literally, but it's not like any of this literally happened. This is a writer, a prophetic writer who's writing to a group of Hebrew people in a specific time, and he's making a radical point about a hated group of people. He's saying, like, so he has, at the end of the story, the writer has God say, you're griping about this bush that you didn't have anything to do with. How much more do you think I care about the enemies that you are at odds with? And directly ties that to, I created them, I grew them, I love them. Which is a radical new idea in, like, historically speaking. And like, and also something that we're still not quite free from as like thinking people. Like I remember I had just started college, and my like first college job during 9/11. I remember, so I was like an adult when all that was going on. I remember the vitriol and the hatred that happened for a specific people group. Not the people who perpetrated this specific evil against us, but a people group.
Right.
Like,
Way oversized.
and I remember feeling like, because I grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s where you were taught like we talked very literally about like, don't see race, don't see, like that was our answer to racism.
Yeah.
Don't see race, don't see color, we've evolved from there a little bit. Like that's, there are better ways to do that, than that. But that is like my early childhood, that was kind of what was ingrained in me. And to go from that to overnight be like, don't see race, don't see color, unless it's fucking Arabs.
It's like a freak.
Because you can't trust them. All those, that specific kind of brown person, and like it was this weird, like, whoa! It was a mind fuck, man. It was a weird kind of, and I remember having existential anxiety in my young adulthood over a lot of that, because I was like, hold on, like, and also because we live in a multicultural society, like it's like, I actually know Arabs. like I know people who are Muslim. What are you talking about? None of this is making sense. And then to have that be an attack against, if you don't feel that way, then you're not American. And
Right.
now this is old stuff, but it's also pretty relevant.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty relevant just within a different context of some of the stuff that's happening today, just even politically speaking.
Yeah.
Very politically speaking.
It feels like we're still addicted to the same idea. That so there's something I call othering. We other people, and so like I brought up before a good friend of mine he was a groomsman at my wedding, who I don't know how he voted in this most recent election, but like he and I would get into conversations all the time about he voted for Trump, I voted for Hillary. Like I was a Clinton supporter, he was a Trump supporter. And I will confess, because I think it is a confession, it was, I don't know how it was for him, but for me, that was like seriously very, very vitriolic at first. I had enough relationship with him that, and he is a good enough guy that we could kind of work through that. And I definitely disagree with that. Like I definitely disagree with the things that he still holds to, but there was something in me that really, really wanted to other him and be like, your whole worldview is wrong, and therefore you are wrong, and I don't trust you, and we can't be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so the kind of the next leading question is like, where do you see that? Where have you felt that? Do you have any stories about your own experiences with either being othered or kind of the temptation to other people? Like, where do you see that in your own life?
I think I'm pretty good at not othering people. I would like to say, just I believe a lot in duality. You can be one thing and also the exact opposite.
Well, so how do you reconcile that? Because I would say that the message from the majority of our culture, and I mean not just like media and messaging and social, like I'm talking about even the conversations I have with everyday people.
Yeah. So I do. Wow, since they're bringing it up. I just like the movement for like gays for Trump, for like the Republican queer community. I think they're stupid.
Right?
I think you have not thought something all the way through. There's a piece you have to be missing.
Yeah.
It's like some of those wires are crossed, and I have plenty of crossed wires, but you got something like else going on, because those things are two opposites that I just...
Well, it's something that seems so clear to you.
So obviously absurd, but
it's one thing for me to say that. It's another thing for somebody who's actually had personal experiences about that.
It's not Republicans.
Right, like...
Not that.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm not talking about
not
Republican
a
affiliation.
Republican.
Yeah, right. But like the process of coming out and like working through the difficulty of that, I would say gives you a lot more credibility in understanding the nuance of that experience. And even you are going like, I can't see where you people even like. Do you agree with math? Like, what are you talking about? like, I have a little bit of experience on that particular issue. Same thing with racial issues around Trump. My wife's Latin and her family's Latin, and like when I hear a bunch of Latin people, like Miami in particular, like Latin people for Trump, I'm like, I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand what you're talking about.
I don't know anybody to help put the piece together for why you thought this was okay. I don't have that insight, and maybe I would learn something new. Well, I might not agree with it, but I might learn something new.
So that's also, before we get to, because it's not my intention to turn this into and these are the beliefs of Jesus that you need to agree with. We're liberal, and that's who Jesus was, and if you're not, then go away. Like, that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is, like, all of that to me is said in a confessional way. Like, there's something a little wrong with, not the, like, I don't understand, like, how did you get that? Like, sure, that's fine. But then that very quickly, especially in this climate, leads to, like,
get out of my truck.
Idiot, you dumb shit, you get away from me, you have no value, I can't trust anything you say. Like, it turns into very divisive, very, like, hateful energy, like, very quickly. That's what this book is about. It's about the, like, hey, that person you hate, even if you don't like hate them, that person that you're so close to hating, that, you know, the thing that you're like, how much more am I supposed to love these people that I've created and nurtured and cared for? Like, it's a tough, challenging message to the insiders, to the people who are in the right. And I don't mean that in a Pharisaical way, because that's usually where it goes. Remember, this is like hundreds of years before Jesus. This is not a Pharisaical book. This is a prophetic book to God's chosen people, who now we are kind of in on that, you know? And I would say, as a registered Democrat, as a liberal person, one of the things that I find in myself and I get often frustrated about in my party is our proclivity towards self-righteousness. And some would call it virtue signaling, some would call it SJW, social justice warrior. And I'll, find whatever. To me, I find in myself, and I think I can see it in other people, how quickly and easily I can become so righteous. Because I'm fighting against racism. I'm fighting against poverty. I'm fighting for healthcare for everyone. And it is so easy to trigger in me this superiority, this how could you ever stand against me? How could you ever argue against me? That happens so quickly in me. Like, so quickly. Like, it's so easily and like, literally, I dare say, you have been on the receiving end of that from me. Like, where I have gotten self-righteous in my own suredness about what is correct and what is true, you have been burned by that. Like, and I've had to come around and apologize for it, you know? Like, and it's so tempting and quick to go there. And I don't think it's a liberal thing. I think it's a human thing.
Right.
But I see it a lot.
I've definitely seen people on the other side do the same shit.
Yeah, oh yeah. I think it's a human thing. I think everyone does that. But there is this call to the righteous that says, hey, you're othering those people. You are othering the people that I created and intended to have life and gave freedom and purpose to. And you are othering them. So this is where the rubber meets the road. Like, what do you, and I know there were a couple of things that you were going to say that I kind of I was on a rant and I didn't let you really speak.
No, you're good.
Okay, like I wanted to check in and make sure that.
I mean, I think even on a smaller scale, this othering thing happens, like when we're in social groups, and we know X, Y, and Z over here, and we don't know A, B, and C over here, and instead of choosing to engage with the new people to the circle, we choose to engage with the people that we already know. And sometimes that comes from a place of I don't want to have to talk to people who are different than me. I don't want to have to put myself out there, fill in the blank, whatever it is. But I think it's so ingrained in who we are that we even do that on smaller scales without even intending to do so.
So what do you make of that? What is the actual? I want you to really, really think of a time when you have felt that way.
When I felt that way?
Because I can think of times when I've felt that way. What is the actual feeling that's happening there? When you've been at least cursory, in a cursory way, aware of there's, something, I don't really want to go deal with that, can you bring up?
Are you talking about when I'm othering or when I'm being othered?
Either one.
Okay. When I'm being othered, I tend to lean into heavy of my type 8 unhealthy behavior.
Enneagram. Hashtag
yes.
Kindred Spirits and Enneagram podcast.
I get very martyred.
Released every Thursday at around 11, depending on how the schedule goes.
I get very martyr-like and very prideful very quickly. And I will ice people out and be like, all right, you think this is going to work without me? Fine, go ahead, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's... But then, once I do that, I get very sad and
so that's another
rejected.
Very interesting thing. So not only does it feel bad, but it also has the opposite effect.
Yeah, it definitely triggers a prideful response.
Distance.
For me, it triggers a prideful response.
Yeah. How, in that kind of scenario, what's an ideal response? What are you hoping that someone might do or say when you're feeling that way? What would be the ideal way to address it?
So usually it's because I feel ignored. So somebody going out of their way to not make me feel ignored or less than, just approaching me and coming up to me to talk or include me or whatever would solve the problem.
What about when you're in direct engagement with somebody and that feeling comes because I
don't feel like that feeling comes for me necessarily in direct engagement scenarios as often, so much as it does after the fact or if I felt ignored. It's a specific when I feel ignored.
I'm having a hard time because I can think of lots of personal examples that I have privy to your experience because you have trusted me enough to share them, and I don't want to out you in some way.
Okay.
So I won't go there, but I can think of other things where you have been othered by people who are close to you, not by being necessarily ignored, but in the way that you are being engaged.
Oh, yeah. I think I know what you're getting at.
And I'm inviting, not pressing. I don't want you
Yeah,
to...
no, I think I know what you're getting at now.
Because I don't want to push you into something that you don't want to be made public. But I think it's incredibly valuable stuff that is like profoundly human experience that a lot of people go through.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I think this is what you're referring to. I don't know if it is or not, but
Who cares? It's what you're thinking of.
I'm like pretty good at being the butt of the joke most of the time. Like, I'm pretty okay with it until it feels like it's personal attacks. And when it feels personal, there's a big difference between like Brandon poking fun at me because I'm being a dumbass, and like
I would give you a little more credit than that. I would say you're profoundly gracious and good at allowing yourself to be the butt of the joke.
Well, for me, it's being included in that. I'm a type 2.
Right.
Like, that's fine. Like, if me being the butt of the joke means everybody else feels included, like, I'm okay with that until it turns into...
As long as...
Right. The minute it turns into a personal attack, I get defensive. And especially if it is poking fun at something I'm, like, particularly insecure about, I get very defensive. And that's when I fall on the sword and become very martyr-like. And my problem is that I fall on the sword that nobody asked me to fall on. I chose to fall on it. So I work myself up and work myself up and work myself up. And then I reflect on it later and I'm like, but you're the only person in the room that asked yourself to do that.
So what do you actually need in those moments? Like, what's actually helpful there?
I mean, the thing that really particularly bothers me is the ganging up. So, like, I feel like it becomes attacking when one person says something and then everybody else starts piling on and piling on and piling on. And, like, if people could not do that, that'd be great. Maybe don't pile on to something. And if you see someone is visibly upset, maybe pull back a little bit.
Is there, like, an olive branch or, like, a way to extend a hand in that?
Oh, we piled on. But what does my mouse want to say to you? Like,
yeah.
Like, what do I do?
What I mean, so
I recognize your mistake.
And it's a little weird because we are zeroing in on your specific stuff. My whole goal in all this is to try and give people some actual understanding of, like, when othering happens, because almost always you can smell it and feel it in the room. You know? And it's like, what do you do if you really want to be like a follower of Jesus, like a disciple who, like, makes peace and brings to get, like, who is emotionally aware and, like, able to simultaneously challenge without causing damage, you know, like those types of, like, amazing skills that come from really mature, healthy people. Like, I'm trying to, like, what does that look like? And let me give you a little bit of a break because we've been focusing on you. I can talk about my own stuff too. Like, because I have a similar mechanism. When I feel underappreciated, and it's hard to describe exactly when that happens, because I'm also kind of okay being the butt of the joke so long as I feel like it's fine.
Right.
And, like, and it's fun.
Until it doesn't feel fine and fun anymore.
Well, and also because, like, so Enneagram stuff again, I'm a type 4. My big thing is being seen for who I am. When somebody really gets at me on something that I actually am, like, bad at, I enjoy that a little bit. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I don't have a huge problem with it most of the time, you know? It's when it starts to feel like you're just making a puppet of me. You're not seeing me. You're like, I do the same thing where I start to go, like, all right, see how well things go without me. Like, all right, you think I'm such a shithead? Good luck without me. And it's like it's hard to describe because I'm still in the room, still part of things.
But I actively choose to distance myself.
I'm not cooperating with
Right.
anything.
I'm not making the room better.
You can feel it. I'm not laughing at things that I don't think are funny. I'm not participating in things. Like, I just become stone cold, and it permeates the room. I remember, so like we used to go on choir tours all the time when I was in the youth group, and there was one choir tour that went just off the rails. It went so bad, and it was, there's all kinds of reasons for that. One of them was I was a leader in the group. My grandfather had just died. Leadership had changed in the adults who were in charge of us. I didn't have a lot of respect for the leader who was in charge of me. I wasn't doing anything to like undermine the leader. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong or bad. I just wasn't leading the rest of the 60-something odd teenagers into cooperating with what was going on. I just wasn't. I was just stone cold. I got so much shit for that because all of the adults... Now, granted, I would to this day say...
It was not
like, you guys have some serious unhealthy work that you need to be doing that you're not looking at. Like, if you're counting on a teenager to make your trip go well, then you have fucked up from the get-go. But also, that's beside the point, because it's not about laying blame as much as it is about the lesson I learned in that. All of those adults, in their brains, like, I was the center of the problem, despite not breaking any rules, not doing anything inappropriate, kind of going along with everything that was going, but just not enthusiastically, or like, I wasn't rallying the troops. And the fact that I wasn't doing that meant, and it was this lesson in the like, that's my defense mechanism. I go like ice cold, stone cold. I withdraw all of my resources immediately. And it's like, hey, don't build anything on me if you're going to be a fuck up, because I'm going to pull them out from under you real quick. Like, and I didn't know that about myself. Like, I had no idea. So like, in those moments when somebody like, for me, what I would say, what I really need is someone to intervene and simply say something or do something publicly that acknowledges who I am, my value, like, and if someone will just be like, hey, like, I just want to stop and say, I really appreciate whatever,
That,
I really
like,
appreciate you
instead of
hosting.
about who you are, about how I'm helping, because I'm a 2, so it's all about helping others and loving others and serving others. So
mine would probably be something that's very having an angle on me. Like having a perceptive kind of like, you see who I am.
Yeah.
You, it's helping. And like, you'll acknowledge the help that you're doing and the stuff
Or just somebody like, again, piling on is a particular like trigger for me. Like somebody just like taking my side or like standing up for me in the middle of that. That to me would be helpful. Or acknowledging, what I'm doing or whatever. For me, it's all about how I help and serve other people. So it's very similar to yours, but just a little different.
I just realized the recording stopped
Yeah.
a long time ago. We're going to be really relying on this GoPro audio again.
Get it blinking.
Hey, everyone out there, Adobe Audition, it's a big no. It's a big no. Don't do it. It sucks. Come at me. They suck. Don't do it. Anywho, how about on the other end? Do you see places where you other people? I do it with my dad's side of the family.
Oh, for sure with my dad's side of the family, 100%, yeah.
And it almost always has to do with politics.
Yeah, mine not so much with politics as just like personal.
Now I will say I
disagreements.
actually had a really great conversation with my dad yesterday, but in the middle of the conversation, because I very deliberately stuck to things that I knew we would agree on. And in the middle of the conversation, he said something like, you know what you sound like? You sound like a conservative. And I stopped him and I said, and I literally acknowledged, I was like, oh, believe me, there's plenty of things I could talk about the other side, but I'm deliberately avoiding those conversation topics so that we can have a peaceable conversation. And he, I think, received that and like, okay, great, and erected a boundary himself. I was like, good, we have a mutual understanding here. We can talk about real things, but the minute we start to go, because, and I would say on both sides of the issues, we lose it. Like, I get wrapped up in my own stuff and he gets wrapped up in his stuff. Now you're asking me, so I think he more than I, but I bet if you asked him, he would say the same thing about me, you know? And that's kind of the nature of it. Like, he would say the same thing about me. I'm not sure I have hard evidence that one of us is right and one of us is wrong, other than the actual vote count for President-elect Joe Biden. Yeah. like I've got some pretty hard evidence on that, you know?
Yeah, I do it to my dad's side of the family for sure. I also tend to do it to different church leaderships and churches that I tend to disagree with.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you want to tell any stories?
Sure. You know what? We've talked about this story. There was a church leader in North America that posted in North America.
You don't say.
That posted this idiotic video telling people.
In your opinion.
Huh? In my opinion.
In your opinion.
It was. If we're talking about my opinion, I'm going to say it was absolutely idiotic. Telling people not to feel their feelings, and that when we filter our feelings through God's word, like, life is just fine and dandy and roses. And it really fucking made me mad. Like, it really made me mad.
Why? How come?
Because why did it make me mad? I mean,
how come?
Lots of reasons. The main one is because I feel like it's encouraging people to repress everything they've ever felt.
Why is that important to you?
Because I've been told by lots of churches and church leaderships that I have been around to repress my feelings and focus on other people and not focus on myself and ask myself how I feel and what I need. And that shit pisses me off.
What? Okay. It pisses you off. Why? What's the end result of that in your experience? When you have taken that advice and followed through on it, what's the end result versus when you've done the opposite?
The end result when I do that is that nothing actually, like, I still feel trapped in those negative feelings. I still feel repressed. I still feel less than. I still feel not good enough. I feel like I have to seek other people's approval to be okay. Versus when I've allowed myself to embrace my feelings of anger and upset and frustration, I feel okay based on my own approval, not what you or anyone else says.
And I would also, as someone who's like literally walked with you through a lot of this stuff, I would say not just anger, frustration, but like grief, sadness, disgust,
right?
All the bad feelings.
Yes, all the things that people are telling you are bad.
I would say no such thing. There's no such thing as bad feelings. There's certainly feelings that feel bad, like that I don't enjoy feeling. But there's no such thing as bad, evil feelings.
Right.
My covenant group, who's a great group of guys, but and I couldn't tell if it was like a serious joke or not. Somehow anger came up, and I made the comment of nothing wrong with that. Like, what's your anger? Articulate it. And one of the guys mentioned, like, oh, I didn't know anger was okay now. I was like,
what do you mean?
Absolutely, anger is like, what are you talking? Have you read the Bible? Like, of course, anger is okay. Like, it's a huge part of the human experience. It's a part of God's personality and expression. It's certainly a part of Jesus' ministry. Like, anger is like very valuable, Like, no, I'm not saying losing your temper and raging
Right.
on people.
And
That's action. That's not feeling. That's like
Right.
losing control of your behavior. That's not great. Like, let's try to address that. But the idea that anger or sadness or doubt or grief or any of these bad feelings are bad.
We had a thing in college when it was like, I'm not mad, I'm frustrated because like one of these things is not helpful, and like one of these things is like inspiring me to action for change. And so like, not a like.
I would always ask, what's the difference between mad and frustrated?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Just like I'm not just mad about it. Like I'm frustrated because I can do something about it. So let me get up and go. I don't know your terminology.
You know, like my thing has been like, frustrated is just that's a set subset relationship. There's anger, and then there's lots of different versions of anger, and frustrated is just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but frustrated is just a form of anger, and I always press people. Now again, like not to other, you know, like this is my point of view, and I come to it the same way you do. The reason I feel so strongly about it is because I have been hurt by the opposite and have been set free by acknowledging the reality of my own feelings as a part of my relationship with God.
Right.
And here's the challenging part. Aren't there people in those other groups of people who would say the exact opposite?
Mm-hmm.
Who would say, my anger and grief takes hold of me and leads me into evil, dark places. And when I practice this, it actually sets me free, and I feel better about life and am able to engage and enjoy. You don't have to agree with the statement. I'm not asking you to agree with the statement. I'm asking you to agree with their right to have that perspective.
Totally.
You know?
Totally can agree with that. The statement I can't get behind. But I can agree with their right to have that feeling.
Yeah,
and yet, because you and I have both lost our shit over it, no, we can't. That's also not true. You know? Like, I actually have a really frustrated, difficult, angry time with people who say the opposite. Who say, no, anger is evil, and I'm rejecting it, and I rebuke it, and I'm walking away from it. And like, I actually get angry at those people.
Yeah.
And there's something going on there that is, I don't think entirely healthy. But I would also say, the way to address that is not to say, I don't feel angry with that person. Like, the way to address that is to go, I do feel angry with that person. What's going on here?
Right.
And I can, because I've been working on that, I can say at least part of that is because I have been oppressed and hurt by that. And when they say that's a good thing, it feels on some level, subconsciously and sometimes consciously, that you are saying your oppression and your damage is good. I'm like, I'm not sure we can be friends.
Yeah.
I think that is a pinpoint on why gays for Trump is so inconceivable to me. That the Republicans for the rainbow flag, it has been going through my mind the entire time I've been sitting here. Just like, I don't know how they make that work, because those are ideals that I feel have repressed me, and so when I see that in other people, I want to like, no, that.
So I want to. Well, first, because I have a couple of maybe I hesitate to say like little tool belt things, because that's the only way. Like, practice is the only way I know how to get through some of that stuff, you know. But let me posit to you as we're kind of like wrapping up. What do we do with that? Because we have this clear calling that says, hey, those people are sons and daughters, and we need a better word that's non-binary, especially on this issue. Like children. Children's the you idiot. Children's the word. These are children of God in very deliberate, loving, gracious terms. That's our calling, is to see them for who they are through that lens. Not to give up the fight.
Yeah.
Not to not be who we are called to be, because I certainly feel called to be a person of justice and fairness and graciousness and more than anything else, people's ability to choose. That's my biggest, I think that's probably the biggest driving force in my life, is that God, as best as I can tell, seems to be a God of overwhelming free will. And anything that is pressured into a relationship with God is not what God desires. But things that are set free into a loving, gracious relationship with God is the thing, that's my major lens that I read things through. So what do we do with the how are you a gay for Trump? And this calling to you are a child of a gracious God who loves you infinitely. How do we do this?
Go ahead.
I want to take a key phrase that I learned from my good friend Brandon.
Oh, good. Then we're gonna agree on this right now. Well, the opposite actually. Take it away.
When there was a situation when I'm just gonna tell this story. It's something.
It's not nothing.
Brandon and I were leading, when I was doing youth ministry, we're leading a youth mission trip to Cherokee
National Forest.
We had 6 youth students at the time. It was a small group. And we had one student in particular who was we love him, but he was very challenging. And he wanted to hang the Confederate flag from the back of
I remember this story.
Of the youth van.
Yep.
And wanted to argue about human sexuality, not knowing at the time that Brandon was actually gay. And it would infuriate me. It would make me so mad. I had never dealt with this.
And can I say, from my experience with you, Brandon, you're actually a person who very graciously receives if you want to talk about things.
Absolutely.
That's not what was going on.
And
It wasn't hey, let's talk about it. It was
you're being a shithead. Put your
flag away.
It was a little
You
more
cannot
aggressive.
hang a Confederate flag from the back of the youth van.
Yeah.
And I hope you're watching this so you can... Anyway. So I would get so infuriated by it. In our leader debrief meetings, we would talk about it. And every time, Brandon would very calmly, very politely say, we just got to educate and inform.
Right.
Educate and inform.
And I take that with
me. That is a teacher. You, sir, are a teacher.
When you disagree with someone, you can love them, you can have compassion for them, you can walk with them. But if you also are still feeling a calling to, to opening their minds up, or however you want to put that, you can absolutely also still love and still walk with and still care for somebody, and also be honest about your own experiences and your own journey, and use that to help educate and inform people. And if they disagree with you after you've done that, then guess what? You still love them. But
this line of let me try to expand your horizons, look through my lens in a way that's not gonna cause enough cognitive dissonance to wreck somebody's relationship.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to offer, it's something that I've said before. It's not new information, and it's something that I stole from other people too.
Hold back on this.
Now, what I'm about to say, I want to say some people take this type of advice as just think these thoughts. When you feel this way, just think these thoughts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing, every morning I wake up, I let the dog out, I sit on my porch, I spend the morning in silence. I water the plants, I let the dog do his thing, and when it's too hot, I sit at the window, and when it's so close to being nice, when it's nice outside, I sit outside on my porch, and I spend it in silence, and And in these meditative moments where sometimes I'm in like active prayer, sometimes I'm in meditation, just trying to be still and be calm. In these moments, really internalizing this thing that I'm about to say. I'm not talking about think these thoughts. I'm talking about like really try and get this into your being. In my experience, that student and everyone else who has propensities towards things that harm you or disagree with you or whatever, even the most horrific ones, like racist, like white nationalism, for the most part, with very rare exception, these are people who are doing what they have been trained by their social groups and by their culture to do in order to get love. Like, no one is born racist. Everyone who is racist is brought up to distrust a different pigment. And if they don't do that, if they're like, hold on, wait, Meemaw, that makes utterly no sense to me. Everything that I've learned about genetics tells me the exact opposite. Like, come on, there's no 3-year-old who's able to do that.
Right.
But instead, in order to get affirmation and acceptance from their community, they must have these views. I would say there's a very similar thing going on the left. I've had plenty of conversations with very far leftist people where I've literally, I don't want to go into details because I don't want to call anyone out, but like, I've been like, hold on, you're saying A and C are the same letter. That makes no sense. And it's not because they're dumb idiots or because they're bad people. It's because in order to get affirmation and in order to get the things that every human being needs, because we're communal people and because we depend on each other, and that's not a design flaw, that's a part of the intention of who we are, it's not that they're dumb or stupid or bad, it's that they've been taught to ignore that in order to get acceptance. And like everyone who you ever have beef with, it's important to internalize that either you're on that side or they are. On the side of, I'm doing what I've been taught in order to receive the things that I need. And like, it's very, sometimes even impossible, but it's very difficult to just let go of that and see the opposite. And so like when I find myself in conversations about that, I'm trying deeply to internalize that. Everyone's doing their best to basically just receive love and affirmation from their community. And like sometimes that literally changes the way I'm talking to people. Mm-hmm. I go from trying to talk them into the right way of thinking and go into the like, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? I want you to know that I'm enjoying this. Okay. I love that you're here. I love that you're willing to talk with me. I love those types of things. Now, it doesn't always work. Like, certainly it doesn't always work. Like, it's not a magic bullet or anything. Yeah. But it's certainly, I can say every time I've done it, it changes my heart in a direction that I want to grow into. Like, the type of person I want to be when I die, that practice brings me closer to that person that I want to be.
I'm so glad. I should have brought this up before your whole speech, but you said, I was like, I'm going to do the opposite. You said educate and inform, and I was thinking that I should probably get educated and inform myself on why you feel this way. What are the fears that you are reacting to, and where does this viewpoint come from? Is it based on to develop understanding and communication?
Well, also learning the skills necessary to do that in real time too. Because those are not natural skills.
That's a thought I can have.
Yeah, those are skills that don't come. They're not like, oh yeah, everybody knows how to talk. No, they don't. Like, not even remotely. Like, it requires practice. It requires intention. It really requires a devotion to, like, again, like, one of the things that's really helped me is like I've started imagining at some point in my life, I started imagining who I want to be when I die. Not that I have to be that person tomorrow, because God, what an oppressive, horrifying thought, you know? But like this idea that like, if I can do things that will move me closer to that, then by the time I die, I might actually be there. Like I may actually get there before then if I'm lucky, you know, like you know, and so that it's really done me a lot of good to think about the practices I need to get. And again, they're not like, oh, think these thoughts and do these things. It's like, no. Spend some time in silence. Really feel what you're feeling. Ask yourself where that feeling comes from. And like those types of practices are the things that have brought me closer to that and make me more able to actually like get along with and even accept and love and graciously like respond to people who are the other, the enemy of the state, you know, the Ninevites, these fucking Assyrians who we hate, you know. It's like, oh, we hate them and God utterly loves them, like to the point of death loves them. Like, okay, what am I not seeing that doesn't lead me to that conclusion? You know, I'm missing something here, you know? All right, I feel like we're probably done.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else? Anything for the good of the order?
No.
All right. I certainly hope the audio didn't suck. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love.